Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review Morning Briefing. It is Friday, the 7th of June. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Yeah, going well, Derek. Although we have some new neighbours, which is nice, but they are sanding the door this morning. So if there is a low hum when I'm speaking, sorry about it. I'll try and do my best to mute. But the perils of living in a flat.
Yeah, can't be a bit of door sanding on a Friday morning, but hopefully it doesn't impact on the sound quality too much. Just a quick word for our podcast sponsors. As ever, next week you'll find that MPH Boilers are opening up a brand new showroom in Dunfermline, and they're launching a VIP Vegas-themed weekend. You can win a number of prizes, including money off services and boiler services and what have you, and there's bigger prizes on offer as well. If you land on zero, you can be entered into a grand draw for a 4-night stay at Trump Tower in Vegas, complete with a helicopter tour as well. The all-important link is in the description below, so you can RSVP. Right, plenty to get through this morning in terms of Rangers and the transfer front. One player, it sort of went a wee bit quiet in the last week or so, is that of Albion Rrahmani of Rapid Bucharest. Now, reports in Romania yesterday and in Kosovo suggest that Rangers were preparing a €6 million bid for his services. It's claimed that Slavia Prague have already failed in a bid for the player, tabled a bid of around £2.5 million. The Rangers bid would be just over £5 million for the Kosovan international. He netted 13 goals in 15 league matches last season, 23 years of age. And it looks like Rangers are looking to make their move. It would be a record fee that Rapid Bucharest would bring in for a player. He is highly rated. And Joshua, I've got to admit, I'm quite excited at the prospect of this lad pitching up at Ibrox. Of course, still a lot of work to be done in terms of the transfer, but by all accounts, quite a substantial fee.
Yeah, and I think it's reports that have come out from that side. We know that Rrahmani is a player who is very likely to leave his club this summer, but there's also a lot of interest in him. That Rangers are not exclusive in that regard. We do know that Rangers were at that transfer room summit. I think it was in Cancun this time, Derek, and we've spoke about this, I believe, in the Cortez deal, didn't we? I think it can be overstated, the influence that these meetings sometimes have. I don't think it's so much that players go around and clubs go around and they're given a presentation on a player for 15 minutes, but it's more about the opportunity to speak to 30, 40 contacts in a day and have that ability to have a lot of conversations at once, given that how mental football transfers are at the moment. It's something that's been running for, I think, 5 to 6 years now, and something that we know Niels Koppen is used in the past, and a lot of other clubs across Europe and the world as well. So one to keep an eye on. That figure has come out from the other side of things. He is a player that Rangers need a number 9 this summer, probably, Derek. Depends what happens elsewhere. We know that Rangers want to move Lammers on. How much money can you get for him? Rangers will hope they'll be able to get more than the fee they paid for him last summer, but at the very least try and recoup some of the fee that it looked like in January they weren't going to get anything close to that. But you'd hope, given his form, that they'd be able to sell him for a little bit higher than that. And then it's about, again, where they prioritise their transfers in certain areas, because we've seen with the Cortez deal and the Diomande deal how they've navigated these deals to try and, I guess, create as much money as possible to be able to spend in the summer window. Some of that obviously is going to come from how they get players out the door as well. And it's going to be, I think, a lot of spinning plates for Niels Koppen and his team this summer to try and get deals like Rrahmani, if that is one that Rangers are seriously interested in, over the line. And it will depend as well on who goes out first or after to get said players in.
Yeah, listen, if Rangers bring in the same amount for Sam Lammers and spend it on Rrahmani, I've got to be happy with that. That is a good business for me. We know that Lammers is heading out the door this summer. Would have wanted a wee bit more for him, but if the rumoured fee is correct, just over £5 million. I think for the calibre of player that you're going after, I think it would be good business for Rangers to do. If you want to find out more about Albion Rrahmani, incidentally, folks, I did speak to a Romanian journalist that covers Rapid Bucharest over there in Romania. It's on the YouTube channel, so do go and check it out. He did tell me at the time, a couple of weeks ago, that the likes of Aston Villa, Napoli, and there was another club, Benfica, were keeping tabs on him. So certainly been a lot of eyes from big major clubs in Europe on him. So I think it would be a bit of a coup. I've seen some saying why Rangers spending that amount of money on a player we don't really know much about, when we could be spending that on Bojan Miovski, who we know all about. Joshua, do you think that's a fair comment, do you reckon?
Yeah, but maybe Miovski would cost even more than €6 million. I suspect that he would, again, given his age profile, given that, Aberdeen aren't a club who've sold lots to Rangers in the recent past. And it's a position, if you take your mind back to January, Rangers didn't go into that window, I'm led to believe, with the intention of we need to sign a central midfielder. But when the opportunity came up to sign Mohamed Diamande for that fee, obviously then in the summer, it was seen as one too good to turn down. Similar with Oscar Cortez, it is quite a lot of money, 4.5 million, not in the grand scheme of football, but for a Rangers, if you've got a transfer window at Rangers, that is a relatively significant outlay. But when you're paying for someone like Diomande or Cortez, who I know has been out injured and he's had a difficult season, but he's 20, already capped for Colombia, was one of the brightest players at the under-20 South American Championship last season. That is just the going rate for players. What Rangers need to do, and as Clement said, kind of towards the end of last season, increasingly, is they need to be clever in where they spend their money and where they make the big acquisitions. Is that the right word? Acquisitions? I'm thinking acquisitions. There we are. Sorry, everyone. They need to be clever because it's clear they need to also bring in quality. It can't just be about we're going to bring in 6, 7, 8, 9, 20-year-olds who are going to take time. Because what we saw last summer, and I think even more with Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, we spoke a lot on the website about squad building this week. If you don't have a squad that is ready to navigate Champions League qualifiers in the first 8 games of the season, you put yourself on an immediate back foot, and that is what has harmed Rangers in the past. And if you look at what Clement said after the Scottish Cup final, that is the point he kept coming back to. How will these players settle in? Because there's 9 vital games in August that you need to be ready for. And this is the difficulty that he and Koppen have. They have to do more than one transfer window's work in one transfer window. And that's why they need to be clever about who they buy and where they buy and ultimately when they buy them as well.
Yep, certainly want to keep an eye on. Next week comment from Tommy Ray Jr. on Instagram says, these morning briefings are very much appreciated, guys. Well, thank you for the kind words, buddy. Still plenty to talk about, even though we are in the close season. Right, other transfer news. Joshua, you had the piece on the website yesterday on Abdallah Sima. He's a player that most Rangers fans would like to see in a Rangers jersey again. Of course, negotiations taking place between Rangers and Brighton, but of course they are without a manager, with Roberto De Zerbi leaving at the end of the season, and that sort of delayed matters somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, again, Clement, Sima, I believe Sima's agent spoke publicly as well in the past. There's no doubt that if Rangers could keep Abdallah Sima under the right circumstances, they would. His contract is up next summer. We believe that there is a clause in that contract that allows it to extend another year as well. Brighton bought into the club for about 6 or 7 million. Hard to exactly identify what that fee was, but it was more than you'd expect Rangers to pay at the moment. And that is kind of the state of play. Nothing completely out of the ordinary. Obviously, Brighton are not a club who have their manager run recruitment. They're one of the better run clubs in world football, let alone in English football, because of their footballing structure ahead of them. This is one where, again, if Rangers could keep Sima, they would. How much will they pay for him? How much will Brighton want for him? And is it one that's going to dwindle on towards the end of the window? Because we believe that Brighton would want to try and test if they are going to sell Sima, and it would be likely that they probably would sell him this summer if they are, because he's got that the 2 years effectively. If they do trigger that extension, or just 1 year if they don't trigger that extension, then obviously there can be certain clauses in the contract that might work for or against their decision in doing that. If they do test the market then, and they don't want to loan him back out, they don't want to sell him for the fee that Rangers want to pay in the first instance, can they get a better deal for him? Player preference does come into these things. Oscar Cortez was someone who really wanted to stay at Rangers. Sima has had his injury issues, but he's also someone who is a Senegalese international, scored 15 goals in the first half of the season, is only 22 years old. When Brighton, or 23, when Brighton bought him to the Premier League, in their club when he was 18 or maybe 19. Really high hopes for what he could do after his start at Slavia Prague. So one to keep an eye on, Derek. Don't expect that decision to be made in the short term. I don't expect that arrival to happen in the short term. It could, because the Oscar Cortez at the back end of that deal seemed to happen very, very quick once it had been agreed. But certainly one that Rangers, I'm sure a lot of people watching this video would like to see Abdallah Sima back at Ibrox next summer. I think a lot of that depends on the circumstances as to what Brighton think they can get for the player, what they want to do with the player, and where Rangers are at that point in the transfer window, as we've just discussed.
Yeah, he was just 20 when Brighton bought him, obviously buying potential. That time I remember speaking to someone when Rangers took on his former club Slavia Prague, and he did mention Abdallah Sima, and that Arsenal and Barcelona were keeping tabs on him. He was a real hot prospect, but he got injured at Brighton, didn't he? And then he had a couple of bad loan spells at Stoke and then Angers over there in France. But he certainly enjoyed a good season at Rangers, albeit an injury-hit one as well. I've seen some suggesting that, he has been out for periods of time through injury, and could they justify spending a large chunk of cash on someone that isn't available for periods of time during a season? That is a big question mark, obviously, over Abdallah Sima. But I've seen enough. I would like to see more from him next season. Right. Other players that have been linked, and one is Thomas Galdamez, of course, the Chilean who plays in Argentina for Godoy Cruz. He has given an interview in Argentina, and he was quizzed directly on interest from Rangers. He says, nothing is known yet. I have a contract until December. I always dreamed of playing in Europe. I want to take this decision calmly and be able to leave something for the club. I am very grateful to Godoy Cruz, knowing that I have 6 months left, but I don't want to go for free. And if I leave, I might return one day. I love the club, the people, the city. They made me feel like one of you. My idea is to give back what the club did for me. Sounds like he's looking to move on, Joshua. Big rumours suggesting that Rangers looking to make a move for him. Left-sided defender, can play left back, can play left centre back. Just been called up to the Chilean national team. He's with them at this moment in time. Good chance of appearing for them in the Copa America coming up as well. Can't say I've seen too much of him, but what do you read into this? Do you think that the wheels moving, perhaps, that we could see an arrival of the Chilean?
Yeah, well, we're 12 minutes in and we're already on our third link, so it just shows you what this window is like. And I know we'll talk about Janis Hagi this morning as well, Derek. And I think if you look at what he said about his agents finding him the right club, it just shows how at this point in the transfer window, Rangers will have their plan and they'll know what they roughly want to do, but circumstances might dictate that depending what type of money they can get in for certain players. I'll throw it back to you because I know you've done a video about this and I've not, can't claim to have watched much apart from a couple of Twitter videos about this player, but left-sided defender primarily plays at left centre-back, is that right? Or is he a left-back first and foremost?
Well, I'm actually, funny you should say that. I've not done a video on him just yet. I'm trying to arrange one.
Oh, is it the Uruguayan?
Yeah, Damian Garcia.
That just shows how many links there is, isn't it? Because I thought Damian Garcia. Okay, fair enough. All right, well, neither of us are well equipped to talk about this one then, because I had it in my mind to throw it back to you. But it just shows you how many links there are, and some of them, you know, when you say you're talking about Sima there with Arsenal and Barcelona keeping tabs on them, that can mean such a variety of things in football, because it could mean that he's someone that, you know, they've watched for months and months and they've scouted him and they've scouted him live, or it could just mean that he's at the bottom of their you know, database with 3,000 players on it. You don't really know. So yeah, that's funny. That shows how many links there are, but keep an eye out for the video.
Yeah, just incidentally, the Garcia video is very good. Alvaro from the Uruguayan football expert goes into detail about him. He certainly looks the player. Peñarol, he plays for, 20 years of age. Galdamez, I think 25, if I'm not mistaken, as well. King Gerald Spaniel, an interesting point. If Rangers do bring these rumoured players in, he says, I hope someone in the coaching team speaks Spanish. That's the thing, Joshua. I mean, I remember back in the Advocat days when there were so many Dutch players in the dressing room and you heard of cliques forming and what have you. It's important that Philippe Clement, if he brings in players of different nationalities, of course, that they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, if you like, and they're all feel part of the squad. He did touch on that when he came in, of course, that he did try and make players that weren't part of it feel more part of it. You heard players sing that as well. They felt more of a togetherness, and that's going to be vital, whoever comes in, especially given the players that have been linked are coming from far-flung places, that they're all feeling integrated.
Yeah, and I know people are saying, well, there's a lot of links to a lot of different markets. This is what it's kind of been mooted since Rangers said they were changing, publicly, privately said they were changing their transfer strategy away from what happened this time last year. I did a piece on the website a couple of days ago, Derek, and I was speaking about, there was a press conference that Michael Beale did about last April, and he was speaking about how all players would have links to him. That kind of, now I would call it an infamous phrase. And some of those players like Dujon Sterling have turned out to be fantastic signings that Beale deserves credit for. But the downside of that is that you get to October, you've had a manager bring in 9 players, a lot of whom have those links tracing back to him. And then you have a new manager with a different style of play. And then when you get to the end of the season, the injuries have caught up. When you get to the Scottish Cup final, Celtic have a fully fit squad and a fully fit bench, and Rangers have nothing near that. They have Sima coming on to play at a number 9 position that he'd only played 3 or 4 times throughout the season. So it's clear that something has had to change in the recruitment strategy, and it's clear they're going to have to do more than one window's work in this window. My inclination would always be, yes, you have to get the balance, not only because of the UEFA coefficient, and we're going to speak about that, UEFA quota, and we're going to speak about that on the website next week. How many players do Rangers need exactly that are homegrown, and how does that impact their selection for the Champions League or the Europa League? But you also look at someone like Diomande and Cortez. Primarily what Rangers need is quality. And yes, you obviously need people to be able to communicate, but you need quality. And the fact that they're going into these different markets, I think, is a bit refreshing, as opposed to just hearing links from the English Championship or markets that we're used to seeing Rangers shop in. So it's going to be a bit of a balance, of course, but if they can bring in players with the likes of the quality of the likes of Diomande or Cortez in the short time that we've seen him, that's the bigger point for me, because ultimately that's what Rangers have lacked. Beyond anything, they've lacked quality, and on the pitch, as simple as that is, and that is what they have to rectify this summer.
Yep, let's talk about one Rangers player that looks like he's heading out the door, and that is Janis Hagi. He spent a season on loan at Alaves in La Liga. He has been speaking about his future. He said, my focus is on the Euros. I had talks with my agents, and the pressure is on them. They know what I want for my future. It's a pretty important summer from me, from all points of view. I told them before going to the national team what I wanted. I expect them to work as well as possible to find the right team and the right manager for me. I can't say if I'll be at Rangers or somewhere else. My future depends on my agent. So there you go. He's got a number of agents working for him. Janis Hagi says he's going to focus on the Euros with Romania. Reading between the lines there, Joshua, I wouldn't be overly surprised if he heads to another team after this tournament in Germany.
He's effectively missed almost 3 seasons of football, because if you go back to when Gerrard left, I think he had an injury at the start of that season. If you take your mind all the way back to remember the Alishkert game where he played in midfield, I think it was it 1-0 at home, Morelos scored, Rangers won that game. And I'm sure he had an injury some point after that. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Then obviously Giovanni Van Bronckhorst came in, and Hagi started to play on the right, and his numbers dropped from the season before, and it didn't quite suit him. He then has that injury, which takes away season and a half, at least a season. He obviously scored that goal at the tail end of Michael Beale's first season at the club away at Hibs, but he hadn't really been that much of a feature. And then he goes away and has a loan spell, which starts well enough, but he really didn't play much football in the second half of the season. So Hagi will understandably be sitting there thinking, I need to play football, because he's 25 now, Derek. I know he's probably had more success for his international team than his club team at the moment, but he needs the right move. And if he can't guarantee first team football at Rangers, I'm sure that will be the metric of what he wants next season, because really can't afford to not have that. Again, he's one of these players in the Rangers squad he obviously signed that contract, I think the day of Beale's first game. He has that value. He has some value that you could try and then invest elsewhere. I think if you read his comments, yes, he's saying his agents are going to find him the right club. Maybe Clermont will want to have a look at him in pre-season and see what is there first. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go on the back of noises like that, though, because as you're saying there, Derek, he needs football, doesn't he? And is he going to be Rangers' first choice out and out number 10? I don't know. I don't think so. And is he going to play in another position? I don't think that kind of one of those wide positions in a team like Van Bronckhorst or Clermont really suits him. If he was playing in a narrow position from out wide, as we saw under Gerrard, maybe so. So interested to see what happens with that over pre-season, but certainly a pretty revealing interview from Hagi's side.
Yeah, it remains to be seen if he'll feature a lot for Romania in the tournament. But as Blazing Blue 72 says, if he has a good one, then that will benefit Rangers, of course. It might start a bidding war, who knows. But Janis Hagi speaking about his future. Another player who has recently departed Rangers, who has been speaking about his time at Ibrox and Wolves, looks like he's heading out the door, is Fabio Silva. He's had spoken to Sport Bible, I think it was. He said Rangers fans are crazy. They love their football. Those Europa League nights were special. It was great to be in that environment. The coach was very important for me. He was always open and we shared ideas. I played on the left wing, but it's important for me to play in different positions. It was great. I don't have regrets in life. Everything happens for a reason. I enjoy playing at Rangers. I feel more complete after playing in a few different positions. I wouldn't change anything. It's a new country with new teammates. Rangers are a big team. I liked it. He also added, I felt the impact of that in the last month and a half, talking about pressure. When I post something or the club posts something about me on social media, that people really criticise me. In the beginning, when I was 18 years old, I'd go home and look at the comments to see what everyone was saying about me and my game. I look at the news as well. I've experienced a lot since then. I don't have time to waste on things like that. The most important thing is the opinion of my family, my agent and friends. He's also been speaking about his move to Wolves and how he didn't want to go there in the first place. It was sort of rushed through by Porto. Basically told him that they had to take the move and they had to take the money, £35 million. So it certainly looks like Fabio Silva is moving on, Joshua. It didn't quite work for him at Ibrox. I get his point about playing out of position. I think ideally, pretty much like Sam Lammers, he would like to play as an out-and-out number 9, but it's not going to happen at Rangers. It'd be interesting to see where he ends up, whether he goes back to his homeland or elsewhere.
Yeah, I think he split his loan spell into two different parts. You remember the Hibs when Rangers had in the Scottish Cup where Silva scored just before the international break in around March time, and he went away and he scored a few goals for Portugal in the 21s. That's when Rangers' season started to fall off. That's when Ridvan was out injured. That's when they had no wingers, and he had Silva playing out there all the time. He played well away at Benfica on the left wing. But when it was a case of, I mean, that is not his position. If you play him as a left forward, maybe, or you play him off the striker, he was doing a lot of defensive work and actually playing in a position, because it was a left midfield position, where he's not played much of his career at all. Interesting what you say about Wolves. We had that detail in one of his pieces, I think, with his former coach at PSV, who was explaining that, look, he had this huge price tag put on his head, but it wasn't, necessarily his preference. Mm-hmm. If you compare his age, he's the same age as Robbie Fraser, he's the same age as Ross McCausland, but because he's moved for this money at such a young age, we obviously think of him as 4 or 5 years older. So in response to what he's saying with social media, could he have helped himself a little bit more at times? Yeah, I think so. Did the position he was playing in not help him at others? Yes, as well. I don't think he's quite in the same boat with someone like Tillman or Ahmad, both of whom are going to go on and play for the top clubs in Europe throughout their career and still had doubts. I know Tillman's slightly different from Ahmad because he had a lot of goals and goal contributions, but you put him in that PSV team this season and you see the difference when the environment is right around him. And that's what Silva's former PSV coach said to me. If you play him out in the left wing where he is isolated, Clermont had literally no options because we saw how few options he had on the left wing. So I don't think that allowed him to show his best form. I don't think he helped himself with some of those moments that I've referenced. At times we forget the age of these players and yes, they've moved for a lot of money when they're younger, but that's not always their choice. And ultimately a loan deal that just probably didn't work out as all parties would have hoped, because as I say, before he went away for that international break in March, he had a couple of good games at number 9, scored a couple of good goals. Remember, he came off the bench against Aberdeen and was really effective. That's one game that stands out in my memory. But I guess like the rest of the Rangers team, who did have a good season from March to May, nobody at all, and it's probably no coincidence that Silva isn't alone in that regard.
Yeah, Ian, an interesting point, says, I'm going to be controversial here and say that Silva will become a decent player as time goes on. He's young, but I see potential. Everyone is obsessed with his price tag. Yeah, it sort of goes against him, doesn't it? There's a lot of pressure on the young lad. Probably, in hindsight, well, he's said it on record, he would have liked to have stayed at Porto. I think he would have developed more if he had stayed there as opposed to heading out to Wolves at a young age. Pretty much similar to Sam Lammers. A lot of talk saying that he left PSV too young, Joshua, and just when COVID struck as well, and he found it difficult, but he's now back in his homeland and it looks like he's thriving.
Yeah, Lammers is an interesting one because I think it was Herenveen, he had a loan spell when he was early 20s, and PSV wanted to keep him at the time, but he suffered an injury when he came back. I think he suffered a bad knee injury and missed the season, then couldn't get game time. Atalanta came in with a lot of money, and it's the same. I totally agree with Ian that Silva is a really good player. He's just not been able to show his full potential at Ibrox, and all the reasons I've probably just discussed. Now, does the player have responsibility for that? Of course. I'm not trying to shift blame, because while that contingent of Rangers players had a lot working against him in terms of injuries for those final 2 months of the season, they also had incredible moments of complacency like that Ross County game, which you have to take responsibility for, which meant that the title slipped away, or how they start the game against Celtic, or how they lose that third goal after it's 2-2 in the 3-3 Old Firm draw. So it's not to take away responsibility, but I do agree with Ian's comment that a player like Lammers is a great example, who lacked so much confidence in front of goal when he was at Rangers, and he scored 2 goals. And then if you watch some of the goals that he does score for Utrecht in the second half of the season, it is like a different player. And it probably does just show, and this is the difficulty when Rangers are recruiting and changing their squad so much this summer, that there's so much that can go right, so much that can go wrong with the transfer, and an environment comes into it a lot. Is the player comfortable? Are they playing in a role they're used to? Lammers, for example, Derek was receiving about half of the passes at Utrecht that he was at Rangers. He just wasn't used to, I don't think, getting on the ball that much. Now you can see, I did an interview with, which again was included in the piece that we did in him last week, with one of his former teammates who said these words to me that couldn't have predicted his season better. He said, look, a lot of coaches want to play him as this 9.5 that you see with someone like Kai Havertz, or I guess Jude Bellingham's doing that as well at Real Madrid, where you get the benefits of him being a technical player in midfield, but he can be a striker up top. And he just said, a lot of coaches want to do that, but he's better as a number 9 and he will score a lot of goals there. And I guess Lammers hadn't really played as an out-and-out number 9 for a number of seasons, and Rangers will be happy that he's had good form that will hopefully recoup a good bit of that fee. But he couldn't do it at Ibrox, and maybe then not only environment but pressure comes into it as well, because once he'd missed that big chance in the Old Firm game, you remember that big miss in the Servette game as well, where Rangers could have gone 3-0 up there, and instead it was 2-1 and it was a little bit nervy. Yep. These are all moments that I guess decide a player's career at a club, and that's why ultimately Lammers is going to play the rest of his footballing career elsewhere.
Yep. Let's get to one or two more comments before we wrap up. First of all, this one, I'll address this. Bruni B says, did Ridvan make the Turkey squad? No, he did not. It was widely thought he would be part of the squad, but he's not going to appear in Germany, which is a bit gutting, because I do have a ticket for their game against Georgia and Dortmund. I was hoping to see Ridvan in action for Turkey, but it's not going to be the case now. So boo-hoo to Turkey, unfortunately, for that one. David McFarlane kindly donated to the channel. Thanks, David. He says, love the show, guys. Any plans for a live show this year? Keep up the great work. Discussed this with somebody, asked this yesterday when I was on with Stevie. We'd love another live show, David, but it's just getting the date sorted and what have you. But very much enjoyed it last year, Joshua, did we not? And hoping to do another one and many more in the future.
Yeah, well, it depends if people would be interested and turn up as ever. But if there was interest there and people wanted to happen, we did enjoy doing it last year. I think we did it was it just before the season started? So it might be tough to squeeze one in around that time. But yeah, people can let us know if they'd like that, and we'll try and make it happen at one point. I know you would like another one, Derek, because it was good fun, wasn't it? It was good to meet.
Yeah, we should take it. We should take it on the road. Bluebells or Blue says a live show in Dublin. I would take it anywhere. Should certainly do that. James says live show in Coffs Harbour, Australia. If the bosses are happy to foot the bill for that, then we'll head out there. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. So yeah, if you want to host us, then we'd be more than up for that. And huge thanks as well to Sky Ninja, who has very kindly donated 5 Rangers Review YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for that, buddy. That is very kind of you to do just that. What you'll get is up to 3 to 5 extra videos per week, some exclusive transfer content as well. There's actually going to be a video later on this afternoon. You'll have seen the Bayern winger Yusuf Kabadai linked with Rangers earlier on this week. He spent the last 2 seasons at Schalke. We're going to get a bit of insight into him from a German football expert. So something to keep your eyes peeled for this afternoon. But thank you very much, Sky Ninja. That is brilliant stuff. Right, that'll do us there. I'll just direct you to the website as well. This morning, there's a great piece on there from Stevie Clifford on Niels Coppen and his sort of transfer strategy. It's a very good read. We'll call it a day there. If I don't speak to you a little later on, then big thanks to Joshua and big thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in to the shows this week. We will be back again, as we always are, through the course of the summer. Despite the lack of Rangers action, we are here every single weekday, so you won't miss any of your Rangers content. Right, we'll speak to you later. Enjoy your weekend. Bye for now.